Hi, ladies and gentlemen, this is Wise Kenya International coming to you all the way from Wonder Youth and Family Camp Trust. And today, we are very privileged to be graced to have amazing, talented, international, acknowledged people of God from the kingdom, kings and priests, called out to be separate. Without further ado, I would love to introduce them.
Hi guys, my name is Mesh. I'm a facilitator in Wendo, and I love poetry, I love food, I love my family, and good tea.
My name is Stella Wambui. My stage name is Wambui the Future. I'm a poet, I'm a spoken word artist, I'm a songwriter, I'm a lot of things. Yeah, and I'm happy to be here.
All right, so today I have a lot of questions, but I think I'll start off with a few. There is a perspective that people have of poetry or spoken word. In Nakuru, it might be different because I've seen people are very hyped on spoken word. Shout out to Upgrade Poetry and all the other events that are usually there. And one of the things that I have noticed, it's open-ended from the context of the creative arts, from dance to music to art to poetry and all that. But specifically for poetry, since you're speaking on poetry, what are some of the challenges you guys have and still are or might be experiencing as poets, and things that are prohibiting people from actually considering pursuing poetry as an art and even as a career? And what things do you think might be limiting people to do the same? It might be our country, might be corruption or lack of opportunities, but from just where you stand, what are some of the problems or challenges you feel like you guys are facing in regards to moving forward as creatives?
The point you said about being in this country, let's start there. We are living in a very corrupt country, right? And as a poet, poetry is more of a calling than it is a hobby or a talent. So you realize kazi yako mostly inaegemea the side ya, kama tuseme, if you're talking about social justice, gender equality, good governance, you'll come to realize there are pieces you cannot write because you will piss off someone.
There are pieces you cannot write because you will piss off someone. I think I have seen that even in the people that are, what are they called? I've forgotten that name. Activists. Like when you decide to stand out for what is true. And I believe poetry is a medium of speaking out on what is happening in your society.
True.
Yeah, it might be used, and sometimes it is used for distraction in the context of entertainment to move people from the aspect of reality. Because I've seen poets that are focused more on lust, are focused more on sex, but now there are poets that are focused more on change, and they are agents of change. But now the reality is, the moment you start speaking about that, for instance, I saw an interview of King Kaka. There's a point in time when he wrote specific pieces and he was actually threatened because people were seeking his life because of the things he was speaking out. Yeah, so continue.
On the same, you'll realize you're a young artist, you're an upcoming artist. The funny part about poetry is hakuna poet mwenye amemake it kabisa. Everyone is always upcoming. An example, people I used to listen to 10 years ago, people I've met in these spaces, still doing the same, still vying for the same positions, right? So hakuna kufika kwa poetry. And I feel like that's also another challenge in poetry, whereby we don't receive the funding that we require. You realize kwa ground watu wako na talent, but the idea of poets being maybe the government kufund poetry, kufund especially art in terms of poetry, because I believe the government fund art. But now somehow people don't view poetry as art. It's more like, you see, if you tell someone anafanya poetry, they're like, pieces zako za mwisho zinaanzia na house, mouse, cows, you know. People think of poetry as something very, very boring. So it's a challenge. When you go on stage, you need to convince people that this is not the poems we learned in high school. This this is something new, we are bringing something new in the industry. And actually kujua that sisi we advocate for social change and trying to put that out there kwa society ndo watu waone, sometimes it's a challenge.
Wow, umenikumbusha high school. Yeah, where I used to there was even a challenge from Equity Bank when I was in high school. For those who don't know, I went to Jamhuri High School. Najua mnaweza kuwa na beef, but it's okay. So the Equity Bank brought up a challenge of people to write poems, and then if they proceed, they would be given scholarships. So now all of us are excited, blah, 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 blah. Long story short, it became a contest from the point of people would judge what you write, not from the creative aspect, but from some other literature aspect. And they might actually not be creatives, but there are things that they're looking for. And since people did not pass, some people would stop viewing poetry as poetry and just look at it as a test that you need to pass. And then the moment you leave it, it's like subjects. The moment you leave school, you leave them inside the school. You don't take it and leave it out. Yeah, so thank you. You have very deep thoughts. Let me come here to this amazing gentleman, the one and only, the man himself, the man with the clothes, President Kingston, all the way from Mr. Meshach, the one and only. What is your take on what I asked?
Well, I think I can speak on challenges that I've seen other people go through, but equally sometimes I've seen myself also being in that space. One of it is inspiration. For you to be able to move forward, you have to have something that motivates you to move forward. So sometimes that is lacking in terms of seeing people who have gone ahead, who are still doing poetry, who are still doing, I mean, is this something that I will do just for 2 years and then it just evaporates, or is it something I can continue with compared to other art forms, like maybe singing? A person will be singing even when they are 70 years old, with a career that they started maybe when they were 20. So is that the same thing with poetry? Sometimes you find people who started poetry 3 years ago, they're not doing it anymore. So finding inspiration can be a hard thing. And I think it's one of the main challenges that I've seen so far.
So I think another question I can ask is why, not even why, let's not reach to the why yet, but you guys are, I believe, you are Christian, you are believers of Christ. Why not also just focus on, because sex sells right now in this current generation.
Yeah.
So because there's one lady I've never forgotten. I don't know. The piece she spoke about, I remember it because of,
you mentioned
yes, because of the environment and atmosphere right there and then. Yeah, it was very intense that kids had to be removed from the. So now the question I was asking myself is, that really sells out here? People will come for your show when they know it's like that. Why sing about things that matter and things that glorify God and things that are pure, like justice, for instance, living a righteous life, having a corrupt-free country, rather than sleeping with a lady or a guy, rather than going out and drinking and just partying and yeah, why this other side and not this side?
Kati yako inasema purpose fixes problems.
For those who don't know.
Yeah, purpose fixes problems. So let me admit, and Mesh can attest to that, every poet mwenye ameanza alianza na a piece of love, either about a girl or a guy they had a crush on, and then somehow they got heartbroken. If not being heartbroken, ikakuwa, there is that aspect of love when you're starting off. As you proceed, you realize your I would say nilisema poetry is a calling, and I would say poetry is bigger than me, it's bigger than Mesh, it's bigger than all of us. The minute you realize that poetry is bigger than you will be very cautious on what you're writing. there are things I will write, and I can tell that this is not from the inner self. This is something I'm writing to get off my mind. It's not from within. I guess, in my opinion, what restricts me from writing about maybe something secular, I would say it's because it's bigger than me. I don't have to think of something so that I can write it. It's more like a revelation. There's a time we had a conversation with Mesh. That was last year, voice camp, and he was telling me 3 years from now, the same problem in Yameleta Saizi. 3 years from now, will you still be writing about the same? Will poetry still be relevant to you? And I told Mesh, I'll go try write from a spiritual concept, try to write about my relationship with God. And then I realized I cannot. And the reason I cannot is because it's above me. I write what comes to me. So, and something that comes from above can obviously not something that is perverted, right? You're writing according to where your purpose is at. So I would say purpose fixes problems.
There is a poet, there is the pieces that we write, but also there is a person behind the poetry that you do. And you cannot separate the two. If you're honest, if you're authentic with yourself, you cannot separate what you write versus who you are. And so I am a disciple of Christ first. I'm a believer first. And therefore, if I choose to write, and if I'm honest with what I'm writing, I write from my heart, because, from the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks. So if my heart is converted, and if my heart is for Christ, that is what I write for. I write about. So I cannot write a secular piece because I'm not secular myself. But I can write it if I'm not authentic, if I'm not honest with myself. If it's just about maybe being prompted, I'll pay you this amount of money, just write for me this piece. Then I can do that. But if I'm just honest with myself, I cannot write something that's not in my heart. Yeah. And if it's a piece that will actually bring impact, I have to write what I believe in.
The last question for this session is, when did you start writing, and why at that specific point? You can start.
You know, usually imenipata off guard. And the reason I'm laughing, because I tell people I started writing poetry in Form 3, and it's almost unbelievable. But funny part, my whole life, I have not known poetry. I've only listened to people perform, Wangoi Kemani, Talanta Mtani in KTN, and that was just another show for TV, nothing much. Started writing in Form 3, and then I realized, hey, what do I skiza? There's that idea of you're doing something, and then you're like, people are listening. And then I'm like, that means I can do something bigger. And then here we are. Yeah.
Um, I started writing when I was in primary school. That's around class 7. Class 7. Back, yeah, class 7. I will not say the year so that, I don't put my age out there, but around there. Someone just prompted me, could you go and write this piece? I was actually doing rap. So I went and wrote it, for the purposes of just getting into a studio. And from then I chose to believe that, I can write. Yeah.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, I know there is a gentleman over there that you are seeing seated down there, or is it up there? Yeah, I think he needs to introduce himself so that he's not stationary. He's a human being. He's not a statue. So yes, you can introduce yourself over there. Yes.
My name
I don't know. You do you.
my name is Max.
Uh-huh.
For those who know me,
Uh-huh.
for those who don't know me, my name is still Max.
Uh-huh. What do you do?
What do I do?
Know what
I
your
do,
passion is.
I do photography,
Mhm.
filming, script writing, anything to do with mass communication.
No. Then technically what we are saying is we were supposed to be behind the scenes, but lo and behold, we found ourselves here in front of the scenes. Sawa sawa? Yeah, and on our, let's say our DOP, director of photography today, and director is the one and only Jemo Wawesh. Shout out to him. So, ladies and gentlemen, this has been amazing. The Spont podcast, it's your host, Wise Kenya International. Be blessed.